So there's this drama that I'm watching that uses a plot device to move a certain romance forward. It's not my favorite plot device, and it'll give a lot of you, I don't know, an ick maybe once I describe it. But in this video, we're not going to be deciding if such a trope should actually exist. What I am far more interested in is the use of it, the audience expectation around it, and whether there is such a thing as a well-executed version of this trope. Like, can that even exist? So let's talk about that. The trope in question, or rather the plot device that has been used so many times it has now become a trope in question, is one where the main lead is cursed, sick, drugged, fed an aphrodisiac, can't control his baser urges, ends up attacking the female lead who resists, and then he does control himself, but only for her sake. If as a Asian drama watcher you are unfamiliar with this sequence, then you're possibly not a very avid romance drama viewer. But the ones who have been consuming a lot of romance media, like me, for years, will know that this plot device has been in use for decades, maybe even centuries. Like, there are myths and epics where man gets drunk and assaults a woman is the start to a great romance. But let's limit ourselves to the current times and the writing of two dramas. One is The Prisoner of Beauty, which is airing this year, 2025, and the other is The Story of Kunning Palace, which aired towards the end of 2023. The interesting thing is both of these are adaptations of web novels. In the novels, both of them have a life redo format where the heroine has already lived this life and she gets to do it again, and this time she's changing things so that the tragic things that happened in the last life doesn't happen in this one. Except by now it's been a few years and they have done so many life redo stories that the crew behind Prisoner of Beauty just decided to do away with that framing. They're not really focused on correcting past wrongs, they're just going with female lead is very intelligent and she is making good decisions. Back to the setup for the trope. In Kunning Palace, you have our female lead Juning and our male lead Jiwei. I'm pronouncing those wrong, aren't I? It's been a while since I heard how they were pronounced. These two have a kind of an alliance. They don't wholly trust each other, at least she doesn't wholly trust him, because in her first life he had killed her. Understandable. Regardless, they spent like a majority of the drama just being allies with very little romantic development between them, until they reach a certain point where the male lead, who has this sickness, I forget what causes it, which kind of turns off his high thinking and he becomes pretty vicious when he's in the throes of whatever the illness is, and they're trapped in a cave. And then at one point he assaults her and forcefully kisses her, but then she manages to like fight him off and it kind of ends there. I don't enjoy forced kisses, so it was not a fun sequence to watch, and I was a bit appalled to find how much that particular case was romanticized online in social media, because it was very clearly non-consensual. At that time, the problem that I had underlined to my friends was not just what was happening on screen, but the kind of lighting and the kind of music that they were using while the scene was going on. It was romantic music. What was happening was an assault, but they were using romantic music because, you know, it's our OTP and they're finally kissing. It's also interesting how they were promoting the sequence, like when they were giving behind the scenes clips, it was very clear that the entire crew was anticipating as, oh, the first kiss of our OTP. Like, there seemed to be no awareness of what that sequence actually represented, which was not consensual coming together of the two leads. So just everything weird about that whole thing, both on screen and behind the screen. So that happened. I will come back to it. Something happens the next day which makes it worse. Let's go off to Prisoner of Beauty. Here our male lead is Wei Xiao and our female lead is Xiao Man. Let's call her Man Man because that's her nickname, and I quite like it. So Wei Xiao and Man Man have entered a political marriage. Wei Xiao does not trust Man Man or her family because her family had betrayed his a dozen years back, and the betrayal had resulted in deaths in his family. So even though they were not directly responsible, basically the Wei clan now looks at the Xiao clan as traitors. And so Man Man, being an extremely intelligent woman, she often says and does clever things, but as often happens when you're looking through a biased lens, Wei Xiao sees those things and calls her conniving and just underhanded, like things that he would compliment anybody else for becomes further proof that her clan is just filled with terrible people. Now, actually the setup, the clan conflict, all of that stuff is really well done. The pacing of the drama is really well done, really enjoying it. However, let's come to where the plot device is used. So, despite Wei Xiao's pretty hostile treatment of Man Man, their enemies to allies arc happens relatively quickly. Like in the first 6 to 7 episodes, they're already pretty solidly allies. Like, she has started to win his trust completely, and they are married. Now, what is happening is that the drama is so focused on turning them from enemies to allies that romance really has no part in much of it. It's them trying to trust and befriend each other, which is a really interesting arc. But again, this is primarily a romance drama, and the romance is not starting. It's nowhere to be found. So the drama takes something that also exists in the novel, but oh so much worse, and basically creates a situation where both the male lead and the female lead go through attempted sexual assaults. And I will describe it now. Did I give you guys trigger warning? I hope I did. The male lead's mother hates her new daughter-in-law, and she really wants her niece to be her daughter-in-law. So she's been pushing her son to like take a concubine, just take some one of our clanswomen as your concubine. Don't just have this enemy's child as your wife. He's reluctant though, and he has basically been just fending off all concubine requests until his dumbass mother comes up with this really stupid plan. So I think in the novel it is the cousin, like the potential concubine, whose name is Chuyu. She is the one who comes up with the plan, but nevertheless it's a bad plan. And the plan is to feed him aphrodisiac and basically shut him in a room with Chuyu so that he has to sleep with her. And then his hands are tied, he will have to take her as a concubine, and everyone will be happy except Wei Xiao, but his family clearly doesn't care if Wei Xiao is happy or not. So that is the plan. So his mother invites him for dinner, feeds him wine mixed with aphrodisiac, and by the way, he's so happy his mom called him for dinner because he isn't very close to her and she's never paid much attention to him, so he thinks they're bonding. And then she pretends to be sick, runs off to some chamber, an attendant comes and calls him and says, hey, go check on your mom, she's really sick. So he's already feeling dizzy and not well. And then he's basically pushed into a room, and Chuyu is inside. The door's locked. The attendant locks the door. And Chuyu tries to seduce him. He's clearly not interested though, and he realizes what must have happened. And the drama makes like really short work of this. He just turns around, kicks open the door, and when he finds his mom outside, says very succinctly, you plotted with an outsider against your own son? I really like that moment, like as a dramatic moment, really well done. And then he goes off to his own chamber. Like he does all of the things that you would logically think of doing. Like he tries to puke his guts out so he can get out as much of the wine he drank. Then he goes and like drinks a lot of water trying to dilute the effects. However, at one point, the female lead who's kind of hovering around him, worried that he is not himself, gets too close, I don't know, and he basically grabs her, carries her to the bed, and she's struggling the entire time. And then he's trying to get her clothes off and she slaps him. Which ends the thing, which is great. He comes back to his hosho awaz, what do you call it, right mind, and stops assaulting her. And he is like, I had something dirty at my mother's, which is all the explanation he gives, and then he kind of commands her to get him an ice bath. Anyway, this whole sequence happens fast enough. There is no lingering, there is no romantic music while either of them are being assaulted. It's treating the situation with a level of gravity that it deserves. And compared to how Story of Kunning Palace did it, if there was a scale of preference, I would prefer this treatment of the trope way more. But now let's talk about what happens right after these sequences were done. In The Prisoner of Beauty, Wei Shao goes on to have like an ice bath. Shaman is listening to him bathe, and that's supposed to create sexual tension. And I suppose it was directed well, but the problem is I can't appreciate their sexual tension when the female lead has just been scared out of her wits after being manhandled by a guy she trusts, even though she's technically in the enemy's camp and is badly treated by everyone in that clan except for the grandmother character. It's a situation where she's already vulnerable and he has just emphasized how much worse things can be. And I think I should have made it clear, they are not physically intimate at this point. She's still mourning the passing of a family member, so she has a whole year before she would have to perform any marital duties in the bedroom. So yeah, she was not expecting this. And so you have a traumatized heroine, and I'm supposed to focus on how sexy it is that he is taking a bath, and like you're giving me ab shots. This is somehow just not computing in my head. I am not being able to focus on the thing you want me to focus on. Subsequently, a day later, he notices that she has a wound on her arm from where he had grabbed her really hard, and he tries to apply ointment while she's asleep, and predictably she opens her eyes, sees him, and shrieks and like jumps 10 feet away. Cannot blame the girl for that, right? And his response is to be hurt because now she's afraid of him. She's never been afraid of him before, but now she is. Again, the story beats are great. There is another conversation it connects to where an advisor had pointed out to him how everybody's afraid of him, but she never is. And now he's created a situation where she is afraid of him. And the female lead, realizing that he's hurt, soon after sets about reassuring him. She points out that the situation was not of his making, he shouldn't feel guilty about it, she knows the kind of man he is, that he would never do something like this, and she's the one who's giving all of the platitudes, and all he's done is like tell her one time that he will never, something like this will never happen again. It's not very balanced. The female lead also, by the way, Shaman has nobody to talk to about what had happened because she is trying to protect the dignity of her husband. So she's hiding it from everyone, including her attendants, who are the only people closest to her in that palace. There is an elder in the family who figures out what must have happened and metes out punishment to, the mother and Chuyu. However, even she doesn't give any kind of support to the female lead. She's just pleased that Manman is protecting the dignity of her husband. This is all fine in a historical romance. What I'm trying to get to is that you use this trope to do this entire thing. You have these allies who have now had a forced sexual encounter which has basically traumatized both of them, but they have nobody to talk to. They're not even talking to each other about it. The female lead's only priority is to make sure that the male lead's feelings are not hurt, and then it kind of all just goes away. They go back to just being allies. This is one more incident that has shown everyone how loyal Man is to Wei Xiao, and he now values her a little more. Honestly, a very different trope could have been used in this situation. This specific trope does nothing. So why did we have to see it? Like, why this specific plot device? Let's go back to Story of the Kunning Palace and Juning and Jiwei. Their relationship does change after that incident, and it is used to sort of shift their dynamic from friends and allies to two people who start seeing each other, or rather the female lead starts seeing him as someone who is interested in her. And the reason for that is not the sexual assault, it's what happens the next morning. The next morning they wake up and she tells him that he doesn't need to be embarrassed. She understands that he was out of his mind. And he tells her,
虽然发病，但我知道自己在做什么。
No, he was not out of his mind. He knew fully what he was doing. So now we don't even have the excuse of the curse/disease blocking his ability to think. He had assaulted her knowingly. And this is shown as an expression of romantic interest by the male lead. Now Juning can no longer see Jiwei and just see a safe man whom she can trust, because apparently being safe is just being friend-zoned and just like nobody who has ever fallen in love with their friend. Just show me one person who has ever fallen in love with a man she trusts. We always fall in love with the men we can't trust and we're deeply uncomfortable with. My point is, what happens the next morning kind of cancels out the entire point of the plot device the previous night. Let's talk about that plot device itself for a second. The idea is that the male lead is unable to control himself around that specific woman. If it was a different woman, he probably wouldn't have the out of control reaction that he had. He has it with that specific woman, the female lead. So even though they are acting on a baser instinct, their baser instinct also recognizes who they are acting towards. The next required part is for the female lead to forcefully say no, like she has to bite him as Juning does, or hit him as Xiaoman does, at which point he finally stops. He reins back his desire. You have a man with overwhelming desire, a woman who does not want to be forced, and the man, therefore, out of care for her, stops himself from hurting her. It makes me ask so many questions about what if she was unable to resist? What if she was too petrified to vocalize or to hit back? Just if she is not forceful enough in her resistance, what would have happened then? Maybe I should have made it very clear at the start of the video that I'm not a fan of this trope. When it comes up, I can't stop thinking of all the reasons this is such bad storytelling. Because if you're trying to show that the man cares so much for her that he will hold himself back, then it should never come to the point of assaulting her. It wouldn't come to the point where you would forcefully kiss her, or where you would get to the point of ignoring her screams and trying to get her clothes off. Because no drug exists in this world that forces a man to do that. There is a real world parallel to what we see in fiction, and that is the one where intoxicated men assault or rape women and then use their intoxication as the exonerating circumstance. And it has worked. Men have walked free because they were too drunk to know what they were doing, which has no basis in science. I hate it so much. It's so terrible. It's just I am just getting angry. I don't know why I chose this topic. So yes, in a very real way, this plot device kind of ends up romanticizing sexual assault, except defenders of this trope would probably argue that the point isn't the sexual assault. The point is where he stops. He doesn't go through with it. Essentially, there is an assumption and an expectation from audiences regarding this trope. The assumption is that a man faced with a woman he is deeply attracted to may at some point face a circumstance where he can't control his desire. And because he's a man, he will attack her. But the expectation is that because he loves her, he won't go through with it. And hopefully also because he's a good man. But the premise still largely requires the initial assumption that a man faced with a woman he's deeply attracted to, given certain situations where his moral restrictions are removed, will attack her. Maybe I think too well of men. I don't think men are incapable of stopping themselves from assaulting or raping women. I think men go around the world every day not doing it. Really frequently. Practically every minute of the day. And the ones who do it don't do it because they have lost control of themselves. They do it very deliberately, understanding that either there will be no consequences, or if they are caught, the consequences will be meager. When I started this video, I thought I would be able to do a balanced analysis of what audiences expect from this trope and how, to a certain degree, Prisoner of Beauty managed to live up to those expectations, and where they kind of stumbled, which is what happens afterwards. Like, Manman gets no support, doesn't get to process her own fear and trauma from what had happened. Also, the fact that it doesn't progress the plot at all. And how in a drama like The Kunning Palace, the plot device itself was useless because the expectation that a man is in a situation where he can't hold himself back but does it anyway for the sake of the woman he loves is ripped apart. Because he wakes up the next morning and says, I was fully aware of what was happening. And I was basically assaulting you, fully knowing what I was doing. To make matters worse, he had taken advantage of the fact that she believed that he was out of his mind. So she was treating him with care in a situation where she was vulnerable to him and his attack. So the plot device in this situation was a smokescreen. It was never about him proving that his affection was higher than his baser desire. It was just about him using his disease as an excuse to assault her and thereby show his romantic interest. I finished watching The Kunning Palace. A bad trope does not usually make me drop a drama. I am going to finish watching The Prisoner of Beauty, which used this plot device far better than Kunning Palace any day. So that's all fine, but it's I don't have a great takeaway, guys. I guess I just wanted to expunge my feelings, and this was my way of doing it. If you guys have a takeaway, let me know. I am failing you at analysis here. This was just a general rant video. Yeah, that's all I got. Okay, bye.